So, welcome to the session today on being detached. And as mentioned before, I think this theme, this topic comes up pretty regularly. And of course, is something that I think is becoming more and more relevant for us as things become intense. Um, when situations are, or when life is good and things are flowing along, then we don't need detachment. We don't need to make an effort to extract our sense of self from the things that are going on around us. But in fact, it's when things don't work the way we would like them to work or how we expect them to work, then that's when we begin to feel shaken up. And so, one of the classic symbols of being detached is the lotus flower. I don't know, you might have come across this image where basically the idea is that there's this beautiful flower, completely immaculate, and however, it has its roots in the usually muddy water, and underneath the water, yes, there's on the surface there's the leaf, the lotus leaf, which is also very beautiful. But underneath that, there are many other parts of the plant, which they're often seen as the family of the lotus. And so the idea is that whilst living with your family, which could mean your, not necessarily your physical family, but anyone that you interact with on a regular basis. So whilst living in the world, whilst being fully connected with what's happening with day-to-day life, with all the challenges and all the earthy situations that happen, whilst all of that is going on, the experience or the state of consciousness is above that. So above in the sense not distant or not detached in the sense of disconnected, but is in a sense not affected by the movement of what's happening underneath. And so it's like the idea is that it's in but not of. So the idea that we're in this world but not of this world. And just I think it's useful to define what it means to be detached and what it doesn't mean as well, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding around this word, around this state of consciousness, and it is also misused, so that's where the misunderstanding comes from. And so it's like whilst I'm using or being in it, so it could be, for example, whilst I'm living in a beautiful house or in a very unpleasant environment, either way, it doesn't affect my state of being to such an extent that it changes the way I think, or it changes what I choose, or that it influences me to such an extent that I deviate from my principles or from what is important to me. And so to be detached is in a sense another way of saying to be stable. And of course, what this means to be detached is that if I'm not influenced by this and not influenced by that, then to me, what that implies is that I am firmly rooted in knowing and in the awareness of who I am. And the boundary between who I am and what I'm not is very clear. And so I think that we have issues with detachment when we put our sense of self-identity where it doesn't belong. So it's one thing to put your heart into something and to do your best and to do everything you can. But it's another thing to invest the sense of self in something, which is what we very often do, and I think we mix it up with thinking that we're doing it with our heart. So, however, to do something with your heart is about giving, is about offering. But to mix my sense of identity, my sense of self, and my identity is that I am using that person, place, object, idea to complete my sense of self. Because it's like I'm using that to feel whole and complete. And so naturally, if it is threatened or if it gets taken away or if it's ignored, then it's as if I have been ignored or I have lost a part of myself. And so it could be, for example, I invest my sense of self in an idea, and I may offer this idea, but it could be that it's ignored or it's stolen, or in some way it's twisted around, or somehow it doesn't get considered, or it's criticized. Then if I, in a sense, have invested my sense of self, which is another way of saying if I've attached my heart to that, then I will take a lot of sorrow from when it gets ignored or criticized or whatever. Whereas if I've been able to be detached about that, in the sense that I've put everything that I can into that, and that has been enough. In a sense, I've already received whatever it is that I need, in the sense of a sense of satisfaction and contentment just by having done it, or having offered, or having whatever it is, or being, that I'm not dependent on the outcome of something to feel okay about myself, to feel that it was worthwhile. And very often we have to make a choice, that we think, well, is this really worth me doing it? And we need to weigh that up, because just in the doing of it may not be enough for me. And so if it is going to take a lot of time and energy, and I am dependent on, or it's quite clear that it's useful to do if it's going to be used, if this, thing or whatever it might be will actually be useful, then I need to check what is the level of my investment in that, and am I prepared for it to be enough just for the fact of having done it. And of course, we have to be careful that we're not wasting our time and energy and thoughts and heart and attention and concentration and all of our resources. So we need to develop this, this ability to discern and to know intuitively as well. So, and or also just on a practical level to be informed. Sometimes we might cook for 20 people and actually only 5 people turned up. You know? So so maybe I just needed to double check the numbers and that's it. And then I didn't need to use a lot of time and energy and resources. And so of course you can see in that kind of situation, if I was attached to the idea that 20 people will be eating this meal, then I will probably get very upset and angry and look for someone to blame, and it shouldn't have happened. And I mean, that's one little situation, but it could be for anything and everything, going from things to do with my own body. So the areas, we need to discover what are the areas that I need to work on in terms of detachment. So just to clarify again, and I think probably we're all quite familiar with this, and so I think this is really just a revision for all of us, me included, is to see that detachment does not mean I don't care. So that's not what detachment is. That is being distant or disconnected. Detachment does not mean to be unenthusiastic or insensitive. Now, the thing is that other people may tell me, you're insensitive or you're cold. And then I need to go back and check that. It's better not to take things on face value, especially when it's a criticism. If it's a feedback that you can feel that is coming from someone that you trust, then of course it's still worth checking. All of that is worth checking, even if it's a nasty comment kind of criticism, it's still worth checking. But detachment doesn't mean that that I'm just say, well, I don't care, don't need that, don't want that, do whatever you want. But it does mean that I having a view from maybe just a little bit standing back. So when I take a step back, you get the idea that, okay, I am taking my space, I'm taking some time because I want to be able to see the whole picture. If I have a picture right up here, then I can't see it really. And so I need to take a few steps back so that I can see the bigger picture. And so it's worthwhile sometimes if someone says something and immediately, the mind takes off and starts to create a million thoughts an hour, a minute rather, to just say, okay, hold on, gather the reins in your hand and say, hold on a second, let's just take a few steps back and put the whole situation into perspective. What am I feeling right now? What's going on for me? And then to look, to stabilize the self, to stabilize the heart a little bit, and then look at the situation with that coolness. So detachment is like a coolness. It's not a coldness, but it's being cool about things. And I think one very important thing that I realize and have learned sometimes the hard way is that actually detachment is the other side of the same coin of love. that where there is true love, there is detachment. And so therefore, love does not mean attachment. And this is, I think, a very, very important aspect to understand and to recognize the power of this um, of this aspect, that in fact love plus detachment is the balance. And of course, where there's love, love is the giving, is the offering, and detachment is the ability to let it go. So when I give something, I have to let it go. Otherwise, I'm not giving it. Otherwise, it's still with me. Or I'm running after it to get it back or to get something back in return, in exchange. And then that becomes a business. That's not love. No. So, so therefore, when I think of detachment, then I think, well, why is it useful to learn how to be detached? No? And one of the things is, of course, is this sense of stability. No? Because what that means is that no matter what happens to the areas in which I need to use detachment, I can remain stable. So the areas that come to my mind are things like my body. So that could be the health, the wealth, or the age, or the aging rather, or the any kind of condition of the body, whether it's too thin or too fat or too short or too tall or too anything. Where there's detachment and therefore where there is love, then I can be stable when the body changes. And of course, one thing that's sure is that the body is changing constantly. And so whether it's the body, whether it's relationships, and those are, of course, maybe the actual relationship is not changing, but the people who occupy those relationships with us, they are changing. Their state of consciousness, the dynamics between us, that changes a lot. And so maybe I don't know what to expect from someone. And so I need to have the ability to be both loving and detached, especially in relationships. And it's especially there that if there isn't this balance, then there is a lot of sorrow that we take and probably give as well. And then we need detachment with objects as well. That's a really important one, because it's when I take my happiness, when the source of my happiness is physical objects. That is just another word for materialism. Is when I make, whether it's money or objects, which could be anything. It could be cars and comfortable this or that. When I make that my source of happiness, or my source of peace, that is when I'm going to be deceived, basically, one day or another. And I think this is a lesson that is one of those ancient lessons, that is quite obvious in a way. But of course, again, we need to be careful that we don't misunderstand detachment from deprivation in this case. So we don't want to deprive the body, we don't want to deprive ourselves of something that's available. If something is available, we need to use it well and to fulfill its use, of its purpose of existence. So the thing is that the detachment comes when I make sure that if it's there or if it's not there, I can still do what I want in my mind and with my feelings and with my thoughts and with my state of consciousness. That my state of consciousness inside does not depend on whether an object is available for me or not. No. And this is something important to check as well. Because, and for people who have had the experience of maybe poverty or just a lot of simplicity in the sense of not having very much, it's a very useful experience actually, because then we know that, okay, well, I can manage, I can manage without. And we can learn how to do that, by practicing, because there are always moments where maybe you want something but it's just not available. You want to do something but you can't in that moment, and so there's an occasion to practice. Okay, so here I can practice letting go, I can practice being detached, I can practice checking, do I create a whole load of waste thoughts because I'm not able to get what I want? And that is, I think that's about reaching that inner maturity where it's okay, because I know that at the time that I really need it, it will come. And maybe this time it's not that necessary, I can manage. And so we need to be very honest with ourselves to know what is going on. Am I suppressing? Am I forcing something that's not true? Am I truly accepting? Am I truly letting go? Or am I kidding myself on that I am doing that? And inside there's a whole lot of thoughts, waste thoughts that are happening. And so there's the body, there's relationships, there's objects, there's also ideas. And that can be a big thing, especially when you're working with other people in any kind of field, which could be your hobby or your work or anything where you're interacting with other people, where you're sharing ideas and projects and so on. And that's where to actually be able to offer the idea and then let it go. And there's this very beautiful image that we sometimes use within the meditation, is that these two images, one is the master and the other is the child. So whilst I'm offering my idea, I'm the master, so I share it with that confidence, with that authority, with that expertise, as the master. And once I've shared it, when it comes to the collective decision, that's when I need to be the child, in the sense of, okay, I accept the collective decision. And maybe I accept the collective decision about that idea, and then I make my own decisions for myself. So it's an interesting one to play around with, of being the master and the child. And Watsi, the difference between detachment and equanimity. I think that equanimity contains detachment, no, because equanimity is, in fact, that ability to be uninfluenced, or to have that state of consciousness that where I am absolutely stable. And so it definitely contains detachment, and maybe you can see it as a synonym. You know. And I think it takes us into uh, more of the understanding of balance. So equanimity is looking at the two, in a sense, the two extremes, which is the polarity which exists in the world a lot, so much. So many things are going to their extremes. And so often we need to find, okay, what is that balanced, stable position inside? You know? And when I think of detachment, I think of it as rounded off with the whole aspect of love. You know? And so love and detachment, you know, equanimity, and what would be the complement quality for equanimity? What do you think? No. Vatsi, do you have any idea? Or anyone? What would ensure that equanimity is balanced? No? Or equanimity is a whole and balanced quality anyway, maybe? No?
I think compassion, rather.
Compassion, right, right, yes, which is certainly an element of love there. So yes, very beautiful. Yes, so anyway, I think it's about practicing in the little and big things really that come up. Practicing detachment, practicing love. Sometimes I need to, you know, I need to develop the side of love, and other times I need to develop the side of detachment. You know. So where do I need to step back, and where do I need to step forward? You know. Where do I need to wait, and where do I need to act? And so I think it's to check and see all of that in all these different areas, and maybe you can think of other areas as well, but the ones that come to my mind are the body, the relationships, objects or possessions, ideas, culture, places, you know, so many things, our job, our, you know, all, really every aspect of our life. Able to do things that we're used to doing. And I think this period will probably have brought a lot of things up for each one of us to check and see how detached am I from all of that. Maybe just a tiny percentage, and maybe not. No. And so the usefulness is to be stable, and I think is also to be truly loving. So whether I need first detachment and then the love will be able to be unleashed, or whether it's I need the love and that's where I can be detached. So sometimes it's one and sometimes it's the other. So I don't know if anyone would like to share anything more, you know, anything else rather, or you have some experiences of this, of practicing detachment, and or how you developed it, and in what way has it been useful to you, you know, in your life. And then I have something to read from Dadi Janki, and we can have a meditation. But I'd like to hear from you in case anyone would like to say anything or write anything, then most welcome.
Mm-hmm. I would like to speak about the detachment. This is something that, you know, first of all, I suffered a lot about the detachment, especially with the Italian. I can say, although that we can say Italian because we are in this environment, because I felt that they were completely divided, but it's not in this way. This is something that I am now understanding, because it was especially because I was unstable, as you said. When we are balanced and we are okay, you don't feel a lot of this detachment that can be useful, of course, in some case, of course, because it gives you sometimes a more clear idea of something from someone who is detached than is so involved, you know, patient, very in this way. It's not so clear, the idea. You don't receive the idea sometimes when you are really involved in something. But if you are balanced, if you are stable, which is so difficult, I can tell you, but you don't feel a lot of this reaction. Because I was suffering a lot about this detachment that I felt, especially in this society. I can tell you, but it's a question, but not only Italian, I can say the European in general, because I have friends from Finland, Sweden, in this way, and I realized the way that they express themselves. It was so, for me, detached, so cold, you know, and I said, oh, how you can speak in this way so cold about this. I was completely, you know, involved in this feeling, so empathy. This is the balance. When you have empathy and you are stable, this would be okay. When you are not stable and you don't have empathy, for sure, you will like criticize. And you would say, this is cold and this is bad. But now it's a question of only, as you said, a balance. This is my experience.
Thank you, Sandra. Yes, it is interesting, and I think one of the things that I realized also, which has been useful especially in terms of being detached about things that bother me, you know, is to try to come away from the judgments, you know, of, in a sense, judgments or prejudgments, you know, which is, I almost don't want to use the word prejudice, because that can often be limited to, you know, the big things of color and all of that. And so I like to use this word, the prejudgment. So I'm already judging before I have all the information, or before I really know the truth about something. And so it's like developing a kind of openness, you know, which means that, okay, even if something looks like, you know, even if someone looks like they are behaving in a certain way, maybe they're not, just maybe, you know. And so it's like giving the benefit of the doubt, especially if I don't have much information. And it's very interesting to catch the self making these very, very quick judgments of, you know, the other day I was walking and there were these three men that you know had these big tattoos everywhere on their whole body, and you know, we crossed each other as they were coming this way and I was going that way, and it was like the three of them were together. And as I passed them, I immediately had certain thoughts, you know, I don't know, like, because they look like gangsters, you know, for example. And then I suddenly thought, but why am I thinking that? You know, am I being deceived by their tattoos, the look on their face, you know, maybe if I had something to do with them, I would need to check and get some information and let my antenna tell me a few things. But if I'm just passing them on the street, then why do I need to judge them? Why do I need to, send that energy towards them? And I want to see them as beings, in these bodies that they've decorated in the way that they like to decorate, and so it was very interesting. And I think we each have these, shall we say, prejudgments that cause a lot of sorrow, a lot of grief, as they say, in our minds, because in the end, the true identity, and this is where we started in a way, is that in order to be detached, I need to be well rooted in my true identity. And that is what will help me. That is what will help me to also see the other person in their true identity. So they are not of this country or that culture or of this, race or background or whatever. And I can, in a sense, go beyond that. And one of the ways that to practice this is what we call the power to withdraw, or the power of introspection. And that helps us to, first of all, be detached from our own body. So what that means is that I am detached from whether my body is male or female. So in the sense that my sense of self, of who I am, is not based on the gender of my body. This is a big thing. My sense of self is not based on whether I'm from this country or that country. But then who am I? And so I need to have very, very strong the understanding and the foundation of who I am. Otherwise, I'm not going to let go of my identification with the body, especially because that's the closest. That's who I think I am. That's who everyone thinks I am. Okay, maybe even more subtle than the body is my personality. So I may say, well, I have a very sensitive personality and I, get upset very quickly. And so, you have to treat me well and etc. But if I go just a little bit further inside and say, okay, that is the personality that I've developed based on certain conditioning that I was subject to within this body as, through the childhood. But actually, there's a deeper personality, and that is my original nature. And so when I can root my sense of self in my original nature, in my innate nature, that of peace, of love, of purity, of bliss and power, and that I am a being of spiritual consciousness. I am the soul or the spirit or whatever you like to call it. But my identity, my sense of self is taken beyond the physical senses and is placed in that eternal sense of self. And that is when I can practice that. That's when, first of all, I can accept my body. I can accept my culture, my conditioning, and then do something about it. If it needs to be healed, I can do something about it. But if I'm always rejecting it, then I'm always disgusted and wanting to push it away, wanting to change it, wanting to improve it, wanting it to be different. But when I know who I am, I can accept my body and everything to do with it. And that means that I can accept other people. But it takes time because it's quite deeply ingrained, but not as deeply as our original innate nature. No. So it's deep, but it's not the deepest. And that for me is good news anyway. No. So yes. Okay. So I don't know if anyone else has anything you'd like to share. Otherwise, I will read what Dadi Janki has to say on detachment. Okay? Okay. So, you need power to remain free from the influence of others. Detachment is this power. If you can't stay detached from influences, you will not be able to keep your thoughts under control. From there, it will be a downward spiral until all trace of inner well-being is lost. The first step in detachment is to understand who you are as a spiritual entity. This allows you to detach yourself from your physical identity and its world of limited thoughts and feelings, and attach instead to your spiritual personality, the being of inner peace and power. A normal day will be filled with challenges to this detachment. On the one side will be your spiritual awareness, but on the other will be the attraction towards human beings and the material world. Detachment is not a question of becoming separate from the latter, but of simply remaining conscious of yourself as a spiritual being whilst being in the world and playing your part. Detachment simply means to keep yourself centered in your spirituality. So, that is what Dani Janki has to say about detachment. So now we can have a meditation, and maybe the aim of the meditation is to experience the self, the sense of self in our original nature. So to shift our identity from the physical context inside. No. So now just to remember that this does not mean that I don't function through my body, or I don't interact with people or use objects or enjoy food or enjoy the sea, or it doesn't mean any of that. What it means is that my anchor, my stability, my sense of self is being strengthened in who I really am, in the truth of myself. So that's what we're doing, is we're strengthening, we're investing, reinvesting our sense of self in who we really are. And this is what we each, little by little, we discover for ourselves. So this is just a guide, a few thoughts, a guided meditation to take us to our own place of centeredness, of the balance of love and detachment, or that place of equanimity. So find a comfortable position and take a deep breath. And feel all the energy of the body relaxing. I make sure that there's no tension anywhere. And I let my eyes rest at one point. And my inner eye of consciousness begins to open, looking inside. So whilst these two physical eyes may be looking outward, my eye of consciousness looks within. And it doesn't function like the physical eyes, but it functions through awareness. So I become aware of my feelings, my thoughts. I can create images. I can perceive my attitude, my inner position. And so I stabilize my consciousness inside, finding that seat like a lotus that is loving and detached. I can visualize, if I like, a huge lotus flower with its beautiful petals of the color of my choice, soft and yet strong. And it's as if I position myself in the middle of this lotus. I am light, a being of light, and so I have no weight. And whilst I can perceive the movement underneath the surface of the water, I can wish well everything that's happening in the world, in my world, and at the same time, I can keep my focus in the awareness of who I am. I am a being of peace. I am love. I am bliss. And as I say this to myself, I can feel the resonance of these vibrations spreading through my consciousness. Bringing a sense of calm and coolness Everything has its own time. I offer my time and energy, and then I let it go. I can see with fresh eyes even old relationships, my relationship with my body, with my work, with an institution, with time, with the situation. And I practice being love and being detached. And this inner position brings me a lot of refreshment. The coolness of the lotus, calms down even the most fiery of minds. And from here, little by little, I guide my attention gently to my physical surroundings, to my physical body, to where I'm sitting, and to how I'm feeling right now.